Hello there and welcome to another tier list video, and this is a tier list video which you've actually seen before. This is the Top Gear Grand Tour, the Clarkson, Hammond and May Road Trip Special tier list. The reason why I'm doing this again is because I wasn't really happy with the original one. I don't get why that one's so popular. In fact, it's going to go on private now, so you can never see it again. Thank God for that. And instead, this one will take its place as the definitive version of the tier list, in my opinion. So this tier list ranking is going through every single road trip special, from the US special all the way to One for the Road, which is the grand finale of it all. I'm going to be ranking it from S to D. There's no F tier this time, mainly because I don't think there's necessarily any special which is truly god-awful, that is so unbearable, it's one of the worst things ever made, that the people involved in the project should be drawn, and quartered necessarily. I think this is a type of, I think every special has something good about them, which at least gives them a chance to being in the D tier at the very least. That is the weakest of them all. It is the one where there's a lot of problems, but there are the good bits here and there. C tier is a bit of 50-50, half of it is good, the other half is not so good. B tier is mostly good, but there are a lot of problems with it, problems which are so detrimental to the whole special that it just isn't very good, or at least it's not as good as, say, the A tier. The A tier is where it's mostly perfect, it's mostly fantastic. There is almost nothing wrong with them. The S tier is, of course, the best of the best. This is the bit which, everyone's going to love, everyone's going to, have a good time. It's going to have nothing but greatness from beginning till end, for very obvious reasons. So basically, this tier list is going through all the Clarkson, Hammond and May road trip specials. So in that sense, these are ones which have been given their own dedicated episodes, or they're usually extended. They're not your usual episode, so to speak. They are specials, because there are, of course, road trips where they did take up a lot of the episodes, but they weren't necessarily considered as special, anything like that. For example, there is the Ukraine road trip where they went from Crimea all the way to Chernobyl. That one is not included in the list because it's not classed as a special. Similarly, you have the Australian road trip where they went through the outback. Again, that isn't classed as a special. It's classed as just a regular event or challenge for an episode. And there's all the other ones, such as the supercars in Italy, and of course the one where they're in America and they go over to the Mexican border. Those ones aren't counted. These are specifically these specials, the ones that are most infamous for being free vehicles usually, and them going through a weird environment. So has my opinion changed on some of these, or has it improved? We're about to see, because the first one on this list is the American Special. This is the US Special. And what's really funny about the US Special is, for those that don't know, the US Special wasn't actually going to be a special. The reason being is because initially the special was an event. It was going to be, shown throughout the episode, clipped up and chopped up into pieces, edited in what way. However, Richard Hammond decided he wanted to crash a dragster at very fast speeds, I think 300 miles per hour, if I recall, and decided to give himself brain damage as a result. So as a result, the US Special, all the clips filmed for this US challenge were then edited as a long special, because to make up for the fact that the season in which Hammond had his accident in was heavily cropped down from being, the usual amount of episodes, I think like around 13 or so, to just 6. It was, heavily cropped down, and the US Special. So the US Special came into existence because of that. And I think for a first special, you can definitely tell they have the episodes the episode sort of format involved. So, for example, they have a thing with the Stig, where the Stig does like a lap time. They have, them doing all these individual little challenges and getting given a little placard told, you have to do this, you have to do that. For example, the Alabama scene where they have to, decorate each other's cars to try and get each other shot. The whole shebang, it has your typical episodic formula. You can definitely tell that this was not meant to have been a special as a result. And in hindsight, when you know about why it came to be, you realize there's a reason why it's like that. Now, do I think that the US Special is good? I think the US Special is definitely fun. It definitely has the entertainment value. I think the beginning when they're looking for a car to drive throughout the US, I think is really, humorous. They're trying to find a decent vehicle for what is a low amount of money, and they're going to be traveling across the US, and it's as simple as that. And I do think the ending is also very sweet, given the aftermath. I believe it was Hurricane Katrina at the time. Showing the devastation that it causes, and they decide, we're just going to give our cars for free. I think that's really sweet, and it gives that sort of bittersweet ending in a way, especially given the journey itself is, you have cows on top of roofs. The challenge of getting roadkill to eat for the night, or the Alabama moments. The Alabama moment is probably the most infamous scene, because they all decorated each other's cars, like with Hillary for president, or country music sucks, and gay sex stuff and all that. And of course, Alabama being Alabama, mostly inbred retards, they obviously did not take it very well and started trying to kill them, and it got quite dangerous real fast. So, in many ways, it kind of highlights a lot of the things that are going to happen in a lot of these specials. Like, it's going to highlight, they're going to be camping out in a way. They're going to be traveling from point A to point B. In this case, it was all across the southern states, I believe, like from Florida. I don't know where it was in the end. Oh, I don't remember. But it was all throughout there. And, of course, it does show you the other aspects, which are, of course, the, controversy. We know that they will get into controversy on the occasion, and it will get a little bit hectic, certainly to say the least. But I think the issues with this particular special is the fact that the special is not meant to have been a special, and you can clearly tell it was not meant to have been a special, because it has that episodic feel. It has the Stig moment, it has all the individual challenges that break up the road trip, so to speak, but it does also contain a lot of things which do lead into the other specials. And so it's kind of hard to rank, because I think to myself, it isn't like an A tier ranking at all. It's not S tier, because like compared to the later ones, it's not as good. And for one thing, the episode or the special length is only 45 minutes long. It is, I believe, one of the shortest specials out there, because it is basically treated as an individual episode. So for me, this one goes into B tier, because it is, it's mostly a really good special. And obviously, in hindsight, it wasn't meant to have been a special, but for what they had, it's a really good special. And, in my opinion, it's a B tier. All right, so up next is the Polar Special. Now, if you watched my original video, this one was the one that caused me the most flack. The comments that came out of it, shocked at me putting it, at the bottom. Shocked that I don't really like the Polar Special that much, and so for this tier list, having, also gone through and watched all the other specials, trying to get a gauge of like what I think is really good, what I think is really bad, has my opinion actually changed on the Polar Special? Do I think the Polar Special is easily one of the worst out there? Do I think it is an overrated piece of shit? Yes, I still do. I'm not changing my opinion. I rewatched it, and I just think it's an incredibly weak special. Like, I will say this. There are some things that I, having, gone through the behind the scenes, whether it's reading Richard Porter's book or, seeing some of the other stuff that I've seen online forums and all that, there is, some context which I have learned, which I do think is worth speaking about. So the Polar Special essentially is a drive through the North Pole, reaching the equator and all that. And so it basically has the challenge side of it. The way I like to look at these specials is through different aspects. So you got the entertainment value. What is the funny parts? What are the, what is funny about it? What is entertaining about it? What keeps it memorable? You have the road trip itself. So the journey from point A to point B, is it's, interesting enough to captivate you. The goal is another thing. Is the goal an interesting or good goal? If it's so, then, well, you know. Um, and also, the difficulty and the complexity of the journeys. Is the journey complex and interesting enough to keep you captivated? And finally, the types of vehicles that they have for the journey. One of the best aspects about these specials is the weird and wonderful vehicles they always use. So the Polar Special only really achieves one of these goals, and that is it achieves a few of the other goals, but only slightly. And it only really achieves one goal, and that is the goal itself, the challenge. I think the challenge is definitely worthwhile. That is a 10 out of 10 challenge. I think it's great. The problem with the Polar Special, in my opinion, is the execution of it. For one thing, there's only one vehicle in this, and they're split into two teams. Hammond is forced to be on this dog sled, and James and Clarkson, they have to be in this big 4x4. And immediately that, for me, is a big red flag. Like, it also, isn't entertaining in any way, because I think what makes other specials so good is that you have all of them in different vehicles, all of them in different types of, transport to get from point A to point B. And I felt like in the Polar Special, that is a missed opportunity right there. What could have worked is they could have had all three of them in three different forms of transport. Maybe keep, Hammond in with the dog sled. Maybe give, I don't know, May a snowmobile with stuff to hold a tent on. Maybe make Clarkson go in the vehicle. I don't know, have it diverse. What would have made this special a million times better if all three of them were in different vehicles? That, in my opinion, would have solved a lot of the other problems, which is half the special isn't actually the road trip. Half the special is them training to go for the road trip. And I'm not going to lie, this is where the entertainment value comes in, because when they're training to go to this, absolutely absurd and exotic road trip, it is entertaining. The guy with the blurred face yelling his head off at Clarkson in particular, and Clarkson being pushed into the cold ice, them learning about, frostbitten penises, etc. It is hilarious. And of course, James May with the shotgun. But it, again, these are little bits that are really entertaining, but this isn't a part of the road trip. Half the special isn't the road trip. The other half that is the road trip is honestly kind of boring. I'm not going to lie, it's incredibly boring. For one thing, the environment is just not entertaining enough to be wild or exotic enough. It is literally just snow everywhere. Snow, and more snow. I said this to a reply to someone on one of the comments in the original video. I said, if you were to look out the window while driving, and you were to look out, say, Vietnam or the African countries they go through, you would think, wow, those are stunning, they are entertaining, they are interesting. If you were to look out the window for the Polar Special, you're just going to see white, and that's it. And there's nothing really... It's nothing really interesting about it. And I get it, the whole goal is to go from... basically go to the North Pole. But it's, at the same time, just a very, it's one of those episodes, it's one of those specials where it would have worked if it was just an episode. This was a challenge for an episode. If it was a challenge for an episode, it would have been fine. But because they tried stretching out as a special, you start to suffer from a filler, where they just have very menial, uninteresting moments, and it's just used for filler. And B, they fill it out with, the training segment, which, again, kind of highlights maybe this should have just been an episode. And if it was an episode, it would have been fine. But because it's classed as a special, it suffers as a result. You don't get free vehicles going on and, them seeing the advantages and disadvantages of these vehicles in a snowy climate. Instead, you just get, one vehicle, really, because the dog sled doesn't do anything. We already know from the get-go it's not going to win. It would have been more interesting if all three of them were in a race of sorts and one of them were to win. But instead, it's just split into two teams. And then you get the behind-the-scenes context. It's a bit of a mixed bag. Because on one end, Richard Hammond, this is a few months after he's just had his dragster crash. And he did all this. That is impressive. But on the flip side, a lot of the production crew and the trio themselves hated this fucking special. They fucking hated doing this. Like, they did not enjoy at all, the experience of doing this. Like, Clarkson has even said, it was great reaching, their goal, and that was thoroughly, worth it in one respect, but at the same time, it was just unbearable. They didn't get along with each other. They got angry with one another. They got angry with the production. Richard Hammond in particular, suffered greatly because he did not get on well with the woman with the dogs. They did not get along at all, and it just resulted in disaster, really. And so really they didn't enjoy themselves. And for me, rewatching this, like, again, I think this would have worked if it was just a part of an episode. Like, if it was heavily edited and just, bits of it shown as an episode, because this highlights the problem that not everything needs to be a special. Because if it's a special, then, well, you have to stretch it out. You have to have more stuff to it. And with the Polar Special, when you only have, like, bits of pieces which are good, it doesn't make for a good special. I'm sorry, I don't see why people really like this special as much as they do. I do find this to be the most overrated special by a long shot. In fact, I'd argue this is one of the most overrated, Top Gear special episodes ever. Because really, in the grand scheme of things, it does not succeed. It doesn't succeed in the road trip aspect or the special aspect. And for me, there are ways of fixing it. And in my opinion, the ways to fix it was, A, let all three of them have their own individual vehicles of sorts or transport to reach their goal. That would have fixed everything. And B, this should have just been a part of an episode. It shouldn't have been its own special. So, do I still hate the Polar Special? I still think it's weak. I don't necessarily hate any special, personally. But this one is still very weak. It's in D tier. It's going to remain in D tier. All the people that were hoping that maybe when I announced I was going to redo this, that I was going to somehow change my opinion on it. No, I haven't. My opinion has stayed the same. It's, even rewatching it multiple times, which has only made my opinion of it feel worse. It's just, yeah. Like, I do think people need to rewatch it, though. I do think people should watch it, and I do think people need to rewatch it to really understand what I'm trying to get at here, why I'm a little bit negative towards it. Okay, so up next is the Botswana Special. Now, last time, I'm not going to lie, last time I was a little bit too cruel on the Botswana Special. I think the reason why is because, A, it was, it's one of the first specials, but it's also still very short, and B, I'm not a fan of the ending, and I'm still not a fan of the ending. I think the ending is way too sudden. Like, you have this grand adventure, and then the ending comes, and it's literally just them driving to a checkpoint, and that's it. Like, the ending is absolutely awful. Like, this has a bad ending. I'm just going to say that right now. Botswana Special has a bad ending. But the Botswana Special also highlights another thing, and that is each special seems to evolve from the other. So, the US Special is obviously the first special, but technically speaking, it was meant to have been an episode. The Polar Special shows us that they can go into all these exotic environments and they can drive through them with a vehicle adapted for such an environment. Botswana Special kind of flips that on its head. Let's have these really shoddy cars and we're going to drive through Africa, and we're going to drive through, salt plains. We're going to drive through all sorts of, rivers and muddy roads with basically crap cars. We're going to see if we can do it. And, that's just a fun idea on its own. But the Botswana Special also adds the context of all three of them having their own vehicles and modifying them into such a way that it can help them go through these environments. It's a step up. It's evolving the formula. And in many ways, this also adds the context of, like, not doing it like an episode. So, instead of doing it like a regular episode where you got this, that, and the other, the Stig, celebrities, and blah, 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 we're just going to play it straightforward. Point A to point B, just go. And so the Botswana Special does that really well. And I believe I put this in, like, B tier last time. However, rewatching it, I fucking love this special. Like, it does have its problems. Like I said, the ending is very abrupt. The length of the special is only slightly longer than US Special. It's like 50 minutes, which means that it's 5 minutes longer. You know, it is not a long special whatsoever. And I feel like this is a special where it probably could have worked being a little bit longer, but that's just me. So this special is very infamous for Oliver as well, Richard Hammond's car, which he falls in love with. And, you know, some of the highlights for me is definitely when they're, like, ripping apart the cars, and Richard Hammond is like, oh, I don't want to do it to Oliver, and you know, maybe I could just remove this, like, you know, cup holder or something like that. Yeah, silly stuff like that. And of course, them driving through the salt plains is pretty iconic. Like that alone is fantastic, that scene. And of course, you know, the given context of what happens in One for the Road, you know, this is arguably more impactful as a result. But, you know, even in an entertainment value, you know, you have the driving through the river where Oliver almost drowns, them shooting holes in the bottom of the car, you know, Clarkson's car basically not working, and it's just, and them going through the salt plains. I fucking love that moment so much. But I do feel like the ending is kind of abrupt. The ending is very abrupt, and obviously, you know, you do have to, you know, think about the fact that they didn't really have an ending. You know, they didn't really have a real goal. They weren't allowed in Zimbabwe because the BBC wasn't allowed for some reason, whatever that reason was. And I don't know, like this is a special where, like, I feel like this is the step in the right direction, you know, in terms of chronology. Every special, you know, improves from the other. You know, even the Polar Special arguably does still improve from the US Special in certain aspects, and other aspects not so much. But this one improves massively, and, you know, arguably this is the first proper special. This is how a lot of the specials end up, you know, progressing from this point onwards. Botswana is arguably the special that starts the trend. It's arguably the first proper special that isn't, you know, episodic in a way, or isn't just a one-off, like, silly little thing. And I like that. And I think, you know, entertainment-wise, it's great. The journey itself is great. The, you know, the actual vehicles being used is, you know, wonderful idea, I think, in my opinion. You know, even if Clarkson's doesn't work half the time. And it's you know, it's rarity to see Clarkson suffer as well, because Clarkson usually, he has, like, the best ones, but here he's not doing so hot. Well, his vehicle's certainly hot, but not in the right ways. You know, and I, you know, and in terms of, like, the actual, like, environment they're driving through, I think this is great as well. It's, like, diverse. You know, you go from this, like, sort of wilderness, this Savara, and then you go to, you know, the salt plains and all that. I like it. And I will say this, it does have one of my favourite lines where Clarkson says something along the lines when they're about to go to the, through those salt plains where there's not even, like, bacteria. He says something along the lines of, Richard Hammond is, like, the smallest thing here, smallest living thing here, or smallest living organism. That's the right quote. God, I butchered that. I should not quote things because I always forget them. But yeah, Botswana, A tier, easily an A tier. It's not S tier for me, only because I do think the ending is a bit lame. The ending is so abrupt as well, it just sort of ends like that. And I think, you know, I think he could have done with a bit more length to it. But either way, Botswana, I love this special. It's a really good special. It's the one that you should definitely watch. Like, even if you're not a fan of the first two specials, which are the US and the Polar Special, just start with the Botswana Special. Like you won't really be missing much. Well, you'll be missing the Alabama bit, but you won't be missing much. And it's great. It's just really good. So up next is the Vietnam Special. Now, the Vietnam Special is the highest rated Top Gear episode of all time. It had like 9.2 out of 10. Like, this is the one that everyone loves. Like, you go on tier lists or rankings of the Top Gear or Grand Tour specials, Vietnam is always number one. Vietnam is either number one or number two, I should say. For very good reason, because Vietnam is almost literal perfection. Like, it really is. So from the get-go, we get a very interesting setup where, you know, they're going to go get some vehicles and they think, oh, I got 1 million, whatever the currency is. I think it's dong or something like that. I don't know. It's going to be great. We're going to buy all, fancy vehicles, and said they can't afford anything, so they have to go with bikes. Straight away, this is a fantastic idea. I love road trips, and you're going to see this a lot with a lot of the other higher rankings. I love road trips where the road trip is unique, where the vehicles are unique. Instead of just usual cars, they use motorbikes here. In Clarkson's case, it's basically a moped, but still, they use bikes here. And I love this aspect straight away. I think that's a fan-fucking-tastic idea. I think it's wonderful. So the bike idea, it's great. And then driving through Vietnam, they have to basically get from point A to point B. Simple quest. It's not, massive. But it makes up for it for the journey itself. Like, you get this beautiful environment of Vietnam. And you also get the historical context, which, a lot of people, only recognize Vietnam for, the war. The Vietnam War between Vietnam and America. Yeah, Vietnam in itself and America. And France, technically, at the beginning of it. But still, let's not get into that just yet. But Vietnam, is a beautiful environment straight away. And whilst I do think that the road trip itself is not the most complex, like they don't go through like rocky terrains or mud or anything like that. They basically stick to roads, and that's okay. That's fine. That's that's perfectly okay and fine. I do think that maybe the idea of them just going through roads is obviously easier because it is bikes. Let's be honest now, bikes are probably a little bit difficult to use and maneuver and what have you. But it does also make up for that with the entertainment value. This is one of the most entertaining specials by a long shot. One of the best moments, in my opinion, is the gift giving. I love the gift giving. I love how they give each other like really ridiculous gifts, like a gigantic wooden boat, which is obviously going to snap and get damaged. A painting, which is obviously going to get damaged. A little statue, which is so valuable it's going to crack. And not only that, but the pink bike. I love the moment where they spray paint Hammond's bike pink. It is hilarious. I love that they give him a pink helmet as well because they destroy the other helmet. And Hammond is, because he's so small, all the clothes fit him, ironically. I love those little bits. And I love the ridiculous attire they wear as well, the flashy suits. It's just great. But to make up for that even more is the ending. The ending is fantastic. This is one of my favourite endings of a special. Basically, they have to create bike boats. We've seen the car boats, the across the channel, the one across that little river as well. This is bike boats, and I think it's great. I love the way that they end this special, and it's just a great moment, really. It's just a great ending, seeing the diverse ways of them making these bike boats. I just think it works so well. And so my voice just cracked then. It just works so well. It's fantastic. So yeah, the bike boats, I love it. I think it's such a unique special. I think it's such a unique idea in general. But there is one negative aspect to this special. As much as I love this special, as much as I think it's fantastic from beginning till end, there is one massive issue, and that one massive issue is the driving test. This is the only part of the special which I think is unnecessary. Like, this is a good example where they needed to cut down on something rather than include it. Because the bike test, or the driving test, like the theory test as well, I guess, it's just not very interesting. It's one of those moments which is obviously filler. They obviously forced it into the special to, I don't know, to add time to pad it a bit. But then at the same time, it goes nowhere and it drags on. Like, the joke wears out very quickly and they just drag it on, and it takes like up to like 10 minutes for this moment just to end. And it's like, we don't need to watch this. We don't need to. We get the joke. We get what they're trying to say. It's unnecessary, basically. I think that is the only segment of this special which sucks. And it's a shame because, for the most part, this is a fantastic special. But that sucks. That immediately is awful, in my opinion. So yeah, as much as I like the Vietnam special, that is the one aspect which is awful. But it's just one little aspect. It's S tier. It's one of the best for a reason. This is one of the best specials for a fucking reason. It is a fantastic special from beginning to end. And, yeah, there's a reason why it's considered the greatest episode ever. Like, there's a reason why. Okay, so up next is the South America Special. This isn't as good as the Vietnam Special, but it is still a very good special nonetheless. I love the way that they arrive in the special. Like, this is one of my favorite introductions to a special where they're being taken... Well, all the vehicles are on boats. They land on this little strip of land. And basically they're getting told, you got to drive through the Amazon, you got to get to this town here. And, it's just a simple, once again, it's a simple idea. But this special really introduces the idea of driving through, like, rough and awkward terrain. Like, obviously, Botswana started that trend, arguably, but it also used a lot of road. And Vietnam didn't use any of that. Whereas this one goes straight for it. So they go through all these diverse, weird road layouts, I say road layouts, they're going through the Amazon rainforest. And then they go on Death Road, which is absolutely wonderful and fantastic. In terms of, like, sheer intensity, I guess you could say. But it also just shows their team dynamic as well, where all three of them are, being banterous, and they're all, struggling to get their vehicles through the Amazon rainforest. They're having to use machetes, they're having to just plow through all this vegetation, and then of course they get to the Death Road, which is just, oh my god, you don't want to go up there. And they make sure to make you feel how absolutely fucked they are on Death Road. Death Road is just awful, like, in every sense of the word. And you have all these little crosses everywhere where everyone has died. It's really bad. Like, it's really, really bad. And, it's just... The Death Road segment is such an intense segment. And when you find out what happened also behind the scenes, it makes it even more intense. So basically, behind the scenes, after they got through Death Road, there's, like, a hotel on, like, the top of this mountain. And apparently, when they were there, they offended some fucking cartel. And the cartel warned them to leave, or else, they would die. And so the cartel threatened them, and essentially they were forced to leave the following morning, very quickly, in fact. So they had to go somewhere else and camp elsewhere. Because for those that don't know, technically speaking, all these specials are staged in a way. And the reason why they're staged is because the producers, like, I think over a month before, certainly weeks before, they basically go out and they track a route of sorts, and they create a route, and they tell the boys when filming actually begins, you have to go this way, you have to go that way. That's why there's so many specials where they accidentally make a mistake and they have to go another way, because the reason why is because the production wants them to go a certain direction rather than going straight forward. It keeps it interesting and entertaining, so to speak. So this is one of the few times where they had to completely make up a new, like, route on the spot. However, it's also after the Death Road segment where, in my opinion, the special kind of takes a bit of a nosedive in quality, because for a good chunk of it, it kind of gets a little bit boring. Like, it just feels like they're meandering about and there's not really a whole lot happening. Like, that's a bit of an unfortunate thing, because the Amazon bit is fantastic. The Amazon bit is not very long, all things considered. It's only like the first 10 minutes or so, but it is just memorable and it's fantastic. Death Road is also, a fantastic segment. It's intense as fuck, but, it's great. But then you have, the middle section, I like to call it, where it's just not very good. It's just them driving through some, like, poor looking towns and buying Viagra, and it's kind of a meh. Like, the environment isn't very interesting, the road layout isn't very interesting. They don't really get up too much during these parts, and it's just, it feels very slow, and it feels like, okay, can you hurry it along a bit? We want to see more of what's to come. And the ending itself, again, it's very abrupt. Like, they go through this, like, volcano, basically. They go driving around a volcano, and the oxygen gets pretty bad. And this is, once again, a really good moment for the trio, because, it is an intense drive, and you see the intensity, you see how much of a struggle it is. But then you get to like the ending, and all it is driving down this steep hill, and of course Hammond, his vehicle gets obliterated, the donkey as he calls it, and so the other two have to slowly go down. I think that is fun, but then the special just ends. Once again, it just has that really abrupt end. There's nothing more to it. Like, they don't just go and celebrate at a pub or anything. It just ends there, which I do think is a bit lame. So overall, and when I was younger, I used to absolutely love this special, and I still really absolutely love this special. But I gotta be honest, it is an A tier. It is an A tier. It's right next to the Botswana Special, mainly because I just feel like the middle section, where after Death Road, it just becomes a little bit boring. It's for me, it's just one of those moments where it's like it's unnecessarily like slow and doesn't really go anywhere, and it just feels very fillery and feels very like nah, I guess. All right, so up next is the Middle East Special. The Middle East Special is basically the nativity play, but with the three of them. They have to get to Bethlehem. They have to see the baby Jesus, or in this case, the baby Stig. And this special, there's a general consensus when you go online, and I have the same opinion, where the first half of this special is fantastic. It is really, really good. Where they're driving through, Iraq and all that. So Iraq and Syria and what have you. That is great. But the second half is boring as fuck. Like, it is so slow. That is the best way of describing it. So what you get is a very 50-50 special. So for they basically have to go through the Middle East, all these different countries. Most of them are war zones. I mean, they are definitely war zones now, but they have to go through all these war zones and all that. And a lot of it is driving through the desert, trying to avoid getting blown up by some terrorist or some group that will try and harm them. And I love the little like prank they do with Hammond, where he's got like a lighter, which is a bullet, and it's just, oh my god, it's like asking to be shot. I also really love the fact that Hammond also gets ill here. I don't know why, but it's just one of those moments where it just makes me laugh, like hearing him in the toilet struggling, and Clarkson just adding a big black cross, saying plague. I will say this, like with the previous special, that Hammond's suffering can be quite funny. In the previous special, one of the things I forgot to mention, which I absolutely love, is when Clarkson's reading that book in the Amazon rainforest, and he's talking about all these insects that do things to people. And I just love the way he says it about the the bot fly, and he says, this man was kept awake with the bot fly eating the flesh inside his head. The way he says it is brilliant. I love it. And this special does something similar with the Hammond gets very ill. He basically has diarrhea, and you hear, it's not very nice, but you hear it, and then Clarkson just takes the piss, and they just abuse him, and then they have the Genesis music blasting. Like, the first half of this special is fantastic. Like, it's hilarious. The plane with all the cars opening up and showing where they're about to land, and they think, oh, we're going to be dropped. The drive-through of all these countries while wearing, like, protective gear because they're scared of being blown up. The going through this abandoned theme park and being very unhappy and all that. I think it's great. And even when they're driving through the desert, they modify their cars and the modifications don't really work. I think it's great. I love it when they modify the vehicles. That's one of the other aspects I love about a lot of these specials, is when they modify vehicles. I love the modification, the engineering side of things. I think it's great. It's one of my favorite challenges in Top Gear and even the Grand Tour, is when they modified something and tried to make it into something like the snowbine harvester or the train cars. I think it's great. Or the train, but no, the car boats. I meant. I think they're all great in their own aspects, and they do the same thing here. And then of course James May has an accident, and James May for whatever reason, I think he faints or becomes, unconscious or something happens and he just falls over and slams his head really hard on some rocks. The massive amount of blood that pours from his head is fucking horrible. Like, James has like some of the more horrific accidents on the show. Like, I know, like, everyone takes a piss and says, oh, Richard Hammond can't drive in a straight line without crashing or stuff like that, but really James May is the one that has the more horrifying accidents. You know, like, he's the one that you see full on like getting just fucked. You know, and it's always up close and personal. It's not like Hammond where you just see it from a distance and falling off a, you know, cliffside or, you know, crashing the vampire dragster. But yeah, like the Middle East Special, you know, it's after that moment I feel is where the special just takes a nosedive in quality, and that's where it starts to linger a bit too long for my taste. You know, a lot of specials, they know where they're going. They know that it's point A to point B. The, you know, road trip has to go all the way around here and all the way around there. But the Middle East Special, like, the first half of it is really, really good. And it's really fantastic. Like, it's really entertaining. It's fun. The environment, the driving, the, you know, the modifications to make. It's great. But then that second half comes in. And the second half is absolutely boring. Like, this is the definition of filler. Like, they do nothing for this, like, last 30 or so minutes. Like, they are, as soon as they like, go to Jordan and then Israel, like, it is just slow. It is so fucking slow, and it is unbearably slow. Like, you know, it gets to a point where you're asking the special to just finish. Like, they have, like, a silly moment where Clarkson thinks he's Jesus, so he can walk through water and all that. And you can definitely tell from this point on that they ran out of ideas. They ran out of things to do. Like, it's almost as if when they mapped the road trip out before the special, before filming, they kind of may have, like, underestimated how quickly they would have got to their destination, and now they're, like, struggling to think of stuff to do. I'm almost convinced that is what happened, because there is nothing happening for this second half, and it is slow and boring as fuck. And, you know, when you look at people's, like, rankings, and look at people's opinions on the specials, I have seen this repeated so many times that everyone says the same thing, where, like, as soon as they hit Israel, as soon as they hit Jordan, it is slow and it just draws to a stop and it is boring. Like, everyone has the same consensus because it is. You know, the first half is so good, so entertaining, so juicy, that the second half just comes along and just, you know, it just drags on. It drags on way too much. Like, it almost feels like they should have just skipped straight to the baby stick in the crib. Because I feel like if they did that, it would have fastened things up. And I feel like the opinion on this special would have been a lot more positive. But instead, people are very mixed with the special because, you know, it's one of those specials where the first half is so good that the second half really undermines and ruins it. So, you know, for me, it goes into C tier. Because I feel like the first half really is the saving grace for this special, but the second half is not so much. All right, so next up is the India Special. Now, this one, I was a little bit lenient towards. Like, I get that the India Special is often considered the worst special by a long mile, but I was a bit lenient, and I used to say things like, you know, it does have its moments, and I do think that the first bit of it is decent. You know, but reading online and reading, you know, the Richard Porter book and reading behind the scenes about what happened with the India Special, like, this is a case of what happens when they get a bit too big for their boots and they think they can just do whatever they want and it will just, everyone will love it. Of course, that didn't happen with the India Special. The India Special was a massive flop. Everyone fucking hated it, and they had to apologize the following season. You know, and they made jokes about how bad this special was. You know, so the idea behind the India Special is it's not necessarily a road trip like a lot of the other road trips are. Instead, it's a challenge to, you know, make Britain great again and the eyes of India and restore relations, etc. It's a very politicized special. And from the get-go, it just like, it does have a good idea. I like the vehicles that they use. I love how they use British vehicles, and they're trying to show off that these vehicles are, going to be capable and great, and they're good representatives of, of Britain for Indians to enjoy. But aside from the train race, which I actually do still think is a really good moment, the rest of the special is just fucking boring. Like, this is just, I think Richard Porter said it best in his book. He said something along the lines of, who's going to watch a special where all they do is drive around the same block of Mumbai over and over again? And that is exactly what it feels like. They are just driving around the same block. The environment is not interesting whatsoever. India, and the worst part is India does have a lot of interesting places that they could have driven through. But instead, they're just driving around Mumbai and they're just doing that over and over again, and it's just boring. Like imagine how much better this special would have been if it was a proper road trip. It was like they had to get to a certain location, and they had to drive all the way down and finish it like that. For me, that would have been far more interesting. But instead, they just drive around a city. Clarkson gets in an accident and doesn't get any repercussions out of it. It just... I find this so fucking boring, rewatching it. It was like, oh my God, like, why was I so lenient towards it? Like, I do think the train race is fun. I think the train race is a great moment. That is easily the highlight of the special. And I do think that the special does try to improve, and it does sort of improve later on. So what I mean by that is, basically, after the... after they realize, after this big party that goes disastrously, because of course it would, they decide to drive off, and finally you get a road trip of sorts. They're driving through India, they're driving through the environment, they're going up these rocky cliff sides, making Richard Hammond's Mini gets destroyed at one point, and it's great. And then they find a random village and they play cricket, and it ends. That's it. And it all happens within 15 or so minutes. It is so short and so lifeless and so uninteresting that I am shocked that they thought that this was a good idea. It wasn't at all. It was a dreadful idea. And I don't get why they thought in any reasonable way what they believed would be a fantastic idea would be, instead of a road trip around India, let's just dawdle about and try to, advertise Britain to Indians. That is why they thought that was a good idea. Why they thought politicizing a special would be a good idea. Why did they think politics would be interesting in any sort of circumstance? It makes no sense. It makes no fucking sense. And it's honestly, this is just so fucking tedious. For all the flack that I gave the Polar Special for, at least the Polar Special is entertaining. At least it had a goal that was interesting. At least it had potential, in my opinion. India Special has nothing. The potential it did have is squandered and instead replaced with something that isn't necessary. This is D tier. By far at the bottom at the moment. This is worse than the Polar Special, in my opinion. Very much one of the worst specials in general. Alright, so up next is the Africa Special. Now, when I was saying the Vietnam Special is usually in the top 2, there is another special that is usually at the top. And that is the Africa Special. Almost every tier list or every ranking of these specials, Vietnam and Africa Special are always the top 2. They're always the top 2, and it's always interchangeable between two, because let's be honest now, the Africa Special is fantastic. This is everything a special should be. And what I mean by that is, well, you got vehicles which are modified and also, unconventional to the environment. The environment itself is lush and beautiful, but also very tricky for them to drive around in. The entertainment value is through the fucking roof. And the goal of finding the source of the River Nile, Absolutely fantastic idea. This is everything you need in a special and then some. And it's got everything to it. There is almost nothing wrong with this special. In fact, I can't really think of anything wrong with this special. Like, it literally hits all the right marks. There's a reason why this is my number one favorite special of all time. Which, you know, I guess I might as well just put it right in the S tier because it is just fantastic. Like, this is a beautiful special. Like, everything you need for a special, for a Top Gear or Grand Tour, Clarkson, Hammond and May special road trip is in this special. You know, I love it so much. You know, I've already gone through, you know, what makes it so good. You know, you got, as I mentioned, you've got the, you know, the road trip itself, you got the journey, you got the environment, you've got the vehicles being used. Everything just works here. The entertainment is great as well. Probably the biggest highlight is the sort of bickering and destruction of each other's cars. So what happens is James May decides to steal a piece of Clarkson's car to fix his own vehicle. Clarkson takes revenge and does the same thing. And so, you know, basically, it gets a little bit out of hand. They start seeing stuff from Richard Hammond and they all just, they end up just having a bit of a fight. It's funny as fuck. The race to the Nile as well at the end, you know, where they go on foot and they're driving around trying to find it and they think they know the location. I love that bit so much. It's just so good, you know, and funny, and the modifications they make, like, you know, the toilet, which is just shit, really, you know, or using a coffin for a, you know, bed or a bedside cabinet, you know, creating a little kitchen in the back of your car, having that big chair on top. I love the modifications they do in this. It's so wild and exaggerated. You know, it's so great. The road trip itself, you know, one of the more underrated moments, in my opinion, is when they're going up this like muddy hill and they are struggling. Like, they're only able to get like 5 centimeters up this hill every, like, you know, 10 seconds or so. And it's like, it's just unbearable how bad this road is, and they're having to like dig through it and having to get these locals out. And because it's found here, I think, where Clarkson sees the destruction of his car door, it is just such a struggling moment, and yet it's so good. It is so brilliant. It is so raw, and that's what makes it so great as well. The rawity of it. Yeah, the river crossing is also funny, with Chair going missing as well. And the little thing to make sure that his journey is better, Clarkson's journey is better, he has that log on the back with a string attached, and of course the log bounces up and smashes the back of his car and glass goes everywhere. I love that so much. Like, it really just, everything about this special is great. Like, everything about it is fantastic. It is a struggle of a journey, but it's a good one. I love how it begins as well. Like, the idea is they have to go find the source of the River Nile, and they say, oh, well, we found it straight away, you know, special over. But no, they actually have to find the proper source of it, and it drives you through this adventure. And that's what this special feels like. It feels like an adventure, and that's what, it's hard to put into words, but it just feels like an adventure. You know, and that is what makes it so beloved, in my opinion. Like, the Vietnam one has a lot more entertainment and has, you have the American bike, for example, which is a substitute car, blasting that American music. You know, you have the pink bike and all that. The bike boats at the end, you know. But then you have this one, and this one feels more adventurous, feels more like a journey, an actual, like, beginning, middle, end that has actual, like, struggles, and it makes it all worthwhile when you get to that ending and that, like, intensity of who's going to win the race. It's just, this is so good. Like, this is almost like what the Polar Special should have been. Like, all three of them are in this race, and they're all, like, battling it out to get to this to the source and to get to the North Pole, you know. Whereas This is what the Polar Special should have been. Like this right here is what the Polar Special should have been, but instead it wasn't. So this is just fantastic. Like, this is also one of the rare specials which are uncensored. So for those that don't know, if you have the DVDs, if you have the Specials DVD collection, which I've got, the Africa Special is actually uncensored. Like, you hear him say fuck in it. Like, Clarkson in particular says fuck quite a few times. He says, what the fuck is that, when the log hits the back of his car? And he says fucking Hammond is not getting this when they're racing to the source of the Nile, which is, I don't know why, but I find that really fascinating. But yeah, this is number one. This, like, even after all the specials that have come, this is still my number one favorite special. This is perfection right here. This is 10 out of 10. Nothing wrong with it whatsoever. Fantastic special. This is what all specials should strive to be. Well, it's over now, but this is what they should have strived to be. All right, so up next is the Burma Special. Now, once again, this is a unique special in the sense that they don't use conventional cars, so to speak. They use lorries, and right away, that's a great idea. I love the idea of them using different unconventional vehicles. I think that's easily such a great idea because it offers unique and fun perspectives and experiences. With this one, you get that. Just like Vietnam, it is entertaining as fuck. There is brilliant moments here and there from the, from the ending in particular, but also from the party with all those generals and also the, what am I looking for? They're going uphill, and Clarkson is too heavy because he's got all these bricks and this massive tree stump. And, he says, can someone please give him a push? No one's giving him a push. They can't drive up there. So he decides to dump them all and, fuck off. But what makes it even funnier is that you hear this bickering on the line and, May is just out of it. He just doesn't care. Like, May, like, throughout these specials are great. Like, you got the South American special where, he's going to machete Clarkson to death. And he's got that sort of dry, sort of humor that makes him so brilliant, and this is another good example of it. And I think also in terms of context as well as the environment, obviously they do go on about the Myanmar situation, and it's funny because this was the first time I ever heard about what's happening in Myanmar. Like, it's something that doesn't get talked about a lot, but even now it's still a war, and on the occasion you might hear about some military leader now killing off this politician or what have you, or blowing up a military base or something like that, or killing a bunch of people. But it's rarely talked about, and this actually shone a light to it. That is really unique in my opinion, especially when they have that party with the two sides are just partying for one day, and then they're going to go back to killing each other, and you have all these like military vehicles driving past with soldiers with guns on the back of it. It's weird because in a way this is one of the more dangerous specials because they're going through what is a active war zone, but it is still fascinating when you figure that out. In terms of the environment is great. Like the Africa Special, it goes from muddy, it goes from really difficult moments, it goes from really tricky areas, but also you got these smoother moments here and there. They go through nature, I guess you could say. They go through the grassy lands, etc. So you do get a lot of these wonderful little moments here and there. And I love the modification they make to the vehicles. I love how he converts Clarkson converts his vehicle into a sports lorry, so to speak. I think that's so good. And I love the little shower that Hammond has, which they end up pissing in, which, I'm sure that's a little bit staged, not going to lie. Like, I'm sure they put, audio there without really, having him there. Oh, that's the way I see it. But still, fun. And in my opinion, of all the endings, just like with Vietnam, where that is such a fantastic ending, but out of all these specials, out of all the endings, this is my favourite ending. I love the bridge building. I love the building of this bridge over the River Cock. it's such a fantastic way of ending it. Like, you get to this tough environment, they're going through all this stuff. There's been some arguments along the way. There's been some vehicle problems here and there. But now they've made it to the end, and now they have to build a bridge, and it's just this sense of this final hurdle. And because it brings you some brilliant moments, like, they dangle a sleeping James May over the river at one point. They topple a vehicle and almost crush Hammond to death. They fall in the river. The bridge collapses a few times. You have all these little difficulties here and there. They Clarkson tries putting jam on a bear to try and track the flies. Clarkson doesn't really do anything. He gets locked away at one point. They get villagers to help, etc. And I feel like, for me, this is a good example of, like, just everything hitting the right note. The entertainment value is there. The struggle is there as well. And, of course, they finally create the bridge. And this is where it gets a little bit hectic, because now they have to go through, one by one over this bridge, which is basically made out of twigs. And it's a very tough finale, really. It's that intensity of, oh God, could it break? Could it fall? And you hear the twigs snapping. You see bits actually fly off and fall off and collapse into the river below. It is such a brilliant, like, ending. Apparently they destroyed the bridge afterwards because of some legal Spiegel bullshit, which is a real shame, because I feel like, imagine if that bridge actually was still around. Like, imagine seeing that on, like, Google Maps or something. It would have been great. But alas, it no longer exists. But that ending, like, as all three of them triumphantly go across this bridge, it's just such a worthwhile ending. It is such a deserved ending as well. Like, this is such a unique special in the sense they use trucks, but it's entertaining as fuck. The environment is interesting. The history as well is also very interesting, and everything else is just hits the right marks. I know I'm repeating myself here, but it really is. It hits the right marks. It hits everything that you need, and it's still one of my all-time favorites. It's in third place at the moment because it's that good. Up next is the final ever Top Gear special. Well, technically it isn't, but out of the Clarkson, Hammond and May era, it is. Basically, this is the Argentinian special, the second South, or what is it called? The Panorama. No. Argentinian special. Fuck it. This is an unfortunate special, because arguably this special is incomplete, because the ending was ruined by some stupid, retarded Argentinians who think that islands that have never belonged to them belong to them. And they think that a number plate, which, by the way, in order to get a car with a number plate, it takes, months. And, if they saw and thought that that was the wrong number plate, basically, it takes months to change the number plate. It doesn't take instantaneously, and they bought these cars like a week before. That's basically what I'm trying to say. So the Argentinian special is unfortunate because it is an unfinished special. What could have been at the end, where the football match could have been really interesting, could have been a fun ending. And unfortunately, we don't get to see that because, as I've already mentioned, a bunch of retards who think something belongs to them that doesn't belong to them, and they are still bitter they can't fight a war properly. But this journey, this special, I'm not the biggest fan of. I'm going to be perfectly honest here. It's like some of the environment they go through, I think is interesting. Like when they're driving through that rocky beach, I think that is kind of cool. I like the, up the mountain as well, where it gets all snowy and icy and it goes to like rocks again. I think that's a really interesting aspect where, like, instead of it being, straightforward, the same everywhere, it's all diverse and different in every aspect. And I do like the changing where they go from one area to another and it's all pretty, but it's all ugly at the same time. It's like, I do like that. The changing of the environments is interesting. The river crossing as well. But again, a lot of it is still just road driving on roads. Not really as interesting as like going through like nature and butchering it. But The other aspect which I don't like about this special is Richard Hammond. You know, I get why he's acting this way. The reason why he's acting like this is because, as I've already mentioned, all these specials are staged. They are all staged in some form or fashion. They are all mapped out by the production team a month in advance. At the very latest, I think. But Richard Hammond in this, he's so fucking unbearable and he's so annoying. Like, for whatever reason, he's just made to be the bad guy in this particular special, where he's just this irritant who is just whining on about the road and how shit his car is and how it's the road's fault and it's Clarkson's fault. And they end up going through this detour which destroys Clarkson's vehicle, and it really pisses James May off. But at the same time, I feel like this is a case of the production team knew that they were going a little bit ahead of schedule this time and decided that they would, you know, try to ease it out of it by basically getting, you know, a circumstance where, why don't we just have them go through this detour to, you know, lengthen the, you know, journey out a bit. But I feel like it also comes at the detriment of our entertainment because, like I said, Richard Hammond is very unbearable in this special. He is fucking unbearable. His vehicle sucks as well, like from the get-go. But he's so unbearable and annoying. He's an irritant. And it kind of ruins the entertainment value. It ruins, like, your enjoyment of the special because of how just annoying he is. You know, and I gotta be honest, like, a lot... I don't know, like, this special just doesn't have as memorable, like, moments here and there. Like, it does have a few, like, obviously the horse accident where James May is thrown off a horse. That's pretty fucking brutal. Again, James May having the more brutal on-screen accidents, and there's another one to come. You know which one that one is. But, like, I don't know, like, this is a special where I don't know, I just don't really care for it that much. It's kind of ruined because of what happened. You know, the controversy at the end where the vehicle gets smashed up. And I feel like that is the only real reason this special is remembered, is because of the ending. But again, like, this is a special where it's like, oh, I don't know. Like, I feel like if what happened at the end didn't happen and we actually had that football match, maybe my opinion on it might have been better. But yeah, it's just a very weak special, you know. But that said, it does have one of the best moments of the show's history, in fact. And that is where Clarkson, it's right at the beginning. He's talking about the vehicle he's driving, and he says that it's the same vehicle he used when his dad was dying in hospital and he brought chicken over. And that right there is one of the most emotional, but easily one of the best moments of the show's history. And it's in this special, a special which isn't very good. You know, it really is. It's one of those things that is quite fascinating, just to have that really good glimmer of hope to a special which, in my opinion, honestly goes into D tier. It's just not very good in many aspects. Like, it's more annoying than anything, and it's, again, kind of ruined by Argentinians. You know, it's ruined in a way. It's an unfinished story, but I feel like there is potential there. There would have been potential there had what happened not had happened. Up next is the first Grand Tour special, and this is the Beach Buggy special. Now, if you've seen my Lost Media video, I mentioned that one of the ideas they wanted in Top Gear was beach buggies. They wanted to do a challenge involving beach buggies where they're all in their own beach buggies, and they would have done something, or James May would have done something. And the event never really transpired. On the occasion they had a beach buggy, but they didn't really do what they wanted to do, and this was kind of their opportunity to do such a thing. However, this is one of those things where it's a bit of a 50-50 in my opinion. Like, this is a very slow special to start off with. Like, the start of the special, they're on this beach, they have to get to another beach. That's basically the idea of it. But they have to, like, you know, go from point A to point B, but starting off from this beach, they go off of the beach, and then they come back to the beach. They go off of the beach, then they come back to the beach. The special is slow to start. They keep coming back and forth to this one beach, and it gets a very tedious very fast. Like, it gets so tedious very fast. That said, when they're on the dunes, that's when the special picks up a bit. And I think that's one of the best moments of the special, is when they're on the dunes on these beach buggies. It's fantastic to watch. And, the big dip Hammond has, which, is unfortunate foreshadowing to what's to come a year later when he goes down the Swiss cliffside. I really do think, there's a lot of potential in these moments. But then the special stops dead in its tracks to do this really pointless poacher moment where Hammond happens to suddenly get tranquilized and they airlift him with a helicopter, which is so obviously fake, it's actually unfunny. And it's a very slow special again because they're just dawdling about for a long period of time. But then you have another great moment where they're camping and, James May, he fucks around with other people's cars. They fuck around with his beach buggy. His vehicle catches fire, and there's brilliant little dialogue where he's saying how he witnessed this old lady, drop an Easter egg for her grandchildren in the road, and it got smashed up, and he thought it was the most depressing thing ever until he saw it in front of his car. That's a great moment. But at the same time, it's a very slow bit of the special. And sure, they drive through rocks and that's pretty interesting. But yeah, that kind of sucks. But then the special picks up again, and you have the ending where, that have to zip line across to this beach. I love this ending. Reminds me a lot of the lorry special, the Myanmar Burma special, where they're doing that. I think that is fantastic. Again, great moment. The ending is fantastic. The ending is really good. And it almost makes up for the whole special in a way. But at the same time, the special has so many faults to it. It's kind of awkward. For one thing, the staged, helicopter scene. It's so fucking staged. It is so staged, and it's not really funny. The poaching scene goes nowhere, and it's just pointless. It's just really pointless, and I just don't get why they thought that was a good idea. For one thing, I feel like that's a really bizarre thing to do. Why they couldn't just have Hammond still asleep in his car or something, and they come up with an idea. And sure, it would still been staged, but it would have been better than having this poaching thing that goes nowhere and is just there for the sake of this one gag. That's it. It just, again, it's one of those things which should have been cut out, and it's just way too drawn out. Similarly, the beginning where it's just back and forth on this fucking beach. It's just, come on, guys. It's like, come on. You don't need to constantly do that. I just have very mixed feelings on this special because the ending is fantastic. The beginning sucks. Ending is fantastic. The June section is great. The middle section sucks. It's so flip-floppy. Half of it is really good. The other half is just absolutely abysmal. This is a good example of a C tier, and I think it's below the Middle East Special, personally. Because whilst the Middle East Special does have its problems with the second half, at least a good chunk of it is still good. Yeah. So up next is the Mozambique Special. Now, the Mozambique Special is one of the shortest specials out there. It's the shortest Grand Tour special by a long shot. It's only 45 minutes long. Yet, despite it being so short, a lot of people, including myself, absolutely love this special. It's bizarre how this special is as good as it is, because when you really get down to it, the Mozambique Special, or the Feed the World Special as it's called, it is literally just a straight line. They go through, from where they are in this beach town, all the way through this muddy road to this poor village with fish attached. And I like the idea of them, delivering fish supposedly to this poor village. I think that's a great idea. I love the parodying of celebrities pretending to give a shit about people, and the reality is they're just doing it for publicity. I love that aspect of it. And of course, this is a short special, and I think the reason why is because of Richard Hammond's second big accident, where he went down the side of a Swiss cliffside in a in the remake and burst into a ball of flames and broke his leg. I feel like that's probably what happened there. At least that's my theory, and I think that's why this is the only special in Series 2. But even despite those flaws, it's just fucking entertaining. Like, this is one of the funniest specials by a long shot. You know, from them trying to catch the fish to them having the fish and modifying their vehicles to hold the fish. You know, all three of them are different vehicles as well. Once again, a big, highlight in my opinion, especially with Hammond in a bike, and the journey, of course, being very muddy and troublesome. Practically rivers, at some point. But the way they hold the fish, the big pickup truck and the fish on the rack, all the stuff there, Yeah, despite the muddy road, it's great. And of course, James May has that fish tank as well, which keeps splashing him. It's funny as fuck. Hammond constantly crashing. And I love the fact that, Clarkson says, he's actually getting bored of him crashing so much. It's just really funny. Like, this is a special where the entertainment value is all through the roof. And of course, James May getting fucking furious with Clarkson constantly being a pain in the ass. Or the, the fact that he kills all his fish, or the fact that he destroys James May's vehicle and uses it as a trailer. It's great stuff. Like, this special genuinely is hilarious. It's genuinely funny as fuck. It's genuinely just hits all the right fucking marks again, but the journey itself is kind of boring. It is just a straight line. It's a difficult journey, which I do think is great, and I think the difficulty of it does add to the challenge. And I think the idea of the challenge is okay. It's not the best, but it's okay. And similarly, I do think the use of the 3 different vehicle types is a great idea as well. So, overall, this is a special where it does have a lot of great value to it. It is short, but it still manages to work with that short amount of time. So, it's going to go in B tier. It's going to be above the US special because entertainment-wise, it is really good. There's a reason why a lot of people love this special. There's a reason why it's often on compilation lists, because it is just that good. It may not be the greatest special in the world, but it is still a good special. All right, so up next is the Colombia Special. The Colombia Special, they have to take photographs. That's a challenge. They have to go around and collect photographs of certain objects. It feels almost like a video game that I used to play. It was believe it or not, it was a Stuart Little video game for PS2 where you had to take photos of random things in your collection. Don't know if anyone recognizes that, but I digress. But off the get-go, they all have their own like sort of 4x4s. I love that James May still has like a Fiat Panda 4x4. It's just, that makes me laugh. The Fiat Panda and James May always one of the same. I used to drive a Fiat Panda once. That was interesting, but still, it was almost always reliable. It just fell apart all the time. But anyways, I love the 4x4s they use. I love that they all have their own like personalities. James has that Fiat Panda one. What is it? Clarkson has one which they keep calling as gay, and Richard has the one which is basically an American one. It's an American one. So the journey itself is a very, interesting journey because they're having to go to different locations to find the objects they need photographs for. And where these objects are, all these creatures, they only exist in certain areas. Like obviously a jaguar, hippos, Pablo Escobar, and what is it? I'm trying to remember. Fuck. It was a bird. They were having to find a bird as well. Forgot the name of the type of bird, but still, I digress. They have all this stuff, all this, places to go to, and I think as a result it creates a rather dynamic journey where they're having to go through like this horrible bridge, for example, which is a dead end, and it's hilarious seeing James May just freak the fuck out, and them just sitting at the end of it waiting just to humiliate him. I love that. You got these moments where there's like a giant like pit almost, where a vehicle, where they put Richard Hammond there and they use him as like a bridge. They take pictures of a bear shitting in the woods, literally. They, they face the Concorde. Yeah, that's right. That's the bird. They obviously go to a mountain to find the Concorde bird. They go all over the place with this special, and I really love that aspect. A lot of people love this special. Very good reason. It is very, very good. The Series 3 specials are really, really good in general, but a lot of people love this one a lot, and for very good reason, because it just hits the right marks. Again, I'm using those words again, but it does. It's got the entertainment value, where it's Clarkson have his trousers cut into short shorts, or the bit which really gets to me and gets to a lot of people, the funniest part is the little fight that they have where James' vehicle breaks down. He's looking under the bonnet. Clarkson accidentally, well, purposely, drives into the back of him, and it almost shuts down on his head. James May gets very angry and throws a rock. And I love how calm he sounds when he throws the rock and he smashes the front screen of Clarkson. And then Clarkson, he's fucking furious. You know when he's angry, because you can tell. And he throws the rock back like a child, and it just bounces off. And then to add salt to the wound, as Richard Hammond drives off, Clarkson goes behind him. Richard Hammond reverses, doesn't look in his mirrors, obviously, and smashes into Clarkson. He yells at Hammond and says, "What the fuck are you doing?" It's that bit is pure gold. Like, that is definitely the highlight. And I do think there are some gags that don't work, though. Like, I don't think the gag of them trying to not say cocaine or reference cocaine is kind of a lame joke, honestly. But for the most part, this special is just fun. So what's preventing me from putting it into S tier, however, is like with the Middle East and the some of the other specials, in fact, where there are moments where, obviously, for the most part, it is really good. But the final, 20 or so minutes from, the Concorde bit onwards, it's a bit slow. It's a bit, it kind of doesn't go anywhere. And Clarkson suddenly getting distracted before he can see the hippos because, staged reasonings. It kind of And then, of course, the joke of him mentioning cocaine, it breaks the illusion. And so, I went the last, 20 or so minutes suck. They are really bad. But it doesn't really take away from the rest of the special. The rest of the special is great. But the last 20 minutes, they're not so good. If I were to rank these, I'd probably put it right there on the A tier. I put it below Botswana and the South America Special. I keep saying South Africa. They didn't do that. So, it's still a good special, just not the best. Up next is I believe it's called the National Lampoon's, Vacation. This is the special where they're once again in America. And in this case, they're using camper vans. So straight away, unique idea. Unique setup, unique vehicles. They're all in camper vans. They're all, going ahead to drive across America. Now, this also has a bit of a flaw. And this bit of a flaw is I'm not a fan of the fact that the environment isn't very interesting. The environment is very dull. It is basically desert and the occasional camper van site, and that's about it. I feel like this is a special where it's let down by its environment, but it does make up for it for a lot of the other things. I think comedically this is entertaining as fuck. This is great. I think the idea and setup is funny. I think it's funny. I say it's interesting. And I love the modifications they make to their own camper vans. It very, once again, it brings out the character of each of the trio. And also great moments here and there, like when Clarkson loses control and he has to almost dangerously try and take back control of his own vehicle. James May just having the worst time ever, but also the race at the end I think is great as well. I love the prank they pull on Richard Hammond where they're at that camper van site, and Richard Hammond is just walking about just upset and grumpy, trying to look for his clothes, and they're taking a piss out of him because, of course, he supposedly got thieves stole his stuff because he, was gassed or something like that. I think that was what it said. I don't remember, but it makes up for that. And a lot of people do love this special. You know, a lot of people really like this special. And I like this special too, but at the same time, you know, I don't know if I can really rank it higher than B, maybe, because it is entertaining. It does have great moments here and there. You know, but again, the environment is kind of dull. There's a lot of staginess, especially with the American returning. I don't know, like that kind of lets it down a bit. I still think this is a good special. Really good. It's entertaining. I love the modifications of using vehicles. I love the uniqueness of using camper vans. I just feel like everything else is a little bit on the weak side. So for me, this is going to be B tier. Again, I'm going to put it right there in between the US and the Mozambique specials. Up next is the final special of Series 3, because Series 3 had a lot of specials. It was kind of like a tester to do just specials afterwards. This is the one that a lot of people consider to be the best Grand Tour special, for a very good reason. This is the Mongolia Special. Now, what makes the Mongolia Special such a good special is, once again, the uniqueness. Pardon. The uniqueness is that they have to build their vehicle. Now, sure, I rattled on a bit with the Polar Special. I said the Polar Special was a weak special because it only used one vehicle and the other was dog sled. It really sucked in that aspect. It should have been free. This one only has one vehicle. Now, surely that should mean it sucks, but actually, no, it makes it quite interesting because they're having to create a vehicle from scratch in the middle of nowhere. They're having to work together as a team to get from point A to point B, which is the town of Moron. Yes, I know. But what makes it such a good special is the vehicle itself is unique. Obviously, it's made vehicle, but it's actually surprisingly reliable. And they're having to travel through an environment that constantly changes. They go from like this desert wasteland almost to, you know, very muddy, swampy sort of environment. And then they go to a mountainous, rocky region. And then they go to like this grassland with a big river. It's just lush and beautiful and everything else and that. It is really diverse for me. You know, I think this is such a diverse environment. Such a diverse, you know, place to go. And the driving is so unique, and you know, everything about it, you know, from the entertainment of them building the vehicle to the entertainment of them being splashed with mud, being cold, wet, and miserable. You know, and the uniqueness of building a vehicle to go across the environment. I think it just works. This just works so well. And, you know, it just, like, it's one of those things that make you think, why didn't they not do this before? Like, obviously, they did make a vehicle before. But why did they not think of a special where they made a vehicle before and they went through what is a literal challenge of going through different environments? You know, and Mongolia manages to be the perfect place because it has all these different biomes almost. Fantastic shit. Like, really fantastic shit. You know, I will say this though. The one flaw that I do have is, you know, they do kind of run this gag to the ground where Richard Hammond is not allowed to drive the vehicle. You know, I feel like that's a bit of a, you know, bit of a dull gag. I'm not going to lie. It's a gag which gets old really fast, and it's like, you know where it's going to go. They're going to give him the vehicle right at the end, and they do. But still, fantastic special. But I don't think it's as good as the other three specials I've got on my S tier. Like, all the other S tier lists are even better in my opinion, but this is still S tier because it is such a unique and well-made vehicle. Truly fantastic. All right, so up next is Seamen, the first of the specials only series. So, Seamen is a Vietnam special again. And I believe I said this before, but this is my favourite special of the Grand Tour. Again, we get a unique circumstance where instead of cars or any like land vehicle, it's boats. And you think, well, environment-wise, you're just going to be seeing water. And sure, that is basically it. But you do get a lot of different, you know, brilliant moments. Like, You get this vegetative patch where, it clogs up the engines. You get, these winding rivers through trees, and you get the stormy seas as well. It all creates a fantastic environment in a way. But not only to add to this, but the humor as well is great. The humor is fantastic. It's on point throughout this special. It just hits the nail on the head. I'm trying not to repeat myself, but it really does hit all the right marks. I love, once again, the boats are characterized based on the individual presenter. This old-fashioned wooden boat. It is very sophisticated. It goes to James May. You got this really ridiculous porn star boat, which of course goes to Richard Hammond. And of course, Clarkson has this big military boat, which of course is big, boisterous, but also really powerful. Obviously so. And I love the little history as well regarding the boat that Clarkson has. And I love the little story he gives when he's like trapped in that, river at one point. It's great. He talks about the Vietnam War again. I love the little history there. And I love the ending as well. The ending, which is absolutely a formidable and absolutely horrific ending where, like, it is stormy weather. And it is actually quite intense. It's quite scary because, Clarkson gets out of it fine, but the other two, they could have fucking died. Like, anyone could have died. Like, it is that tough. And, I also quite like how this is a, contrast to the other Vietnam Special. Because the first Vietnam Special, Clarkson was suffering throughout it. He was not having a good time. He hated it so much. But the second Vietnam Special, he is having a good time. He's having a great time. He's not getting injured. He's not having a nasty bike accident. Instead, he's doing well. Whereas the other two are the ones suffering. I love that little aspect of it. I love the little flipping of this Vietnam Special. I also just really like the moment where they're trying to stay at this like little shitty little hotel and there's this loud music, and like on the door it's got these weird like magazine cutouts of like babies and women. It's just really weird looking fucking, like, I love how fucked up this is. Like, it is, I think it's the Africa Special, which had a similar circumstance where they're going into a hotel and it's just like there's this bed which has got like this horrific stain on it, as well as like all this other crap everywhere. It's just like you just have all these like horrible hotels. It just makes for great entertainment, really. But yeah, this is a special which is super unique. It is super entertaining. The journey itself is a difficult struggle, but at the same time, it provides brilliance from beginning to end. And I love the little gag he makes at the end, saying, on that disappointment for Top Gear, the little slight dig at Top Gear, they end it like that. And I love the ending as well. The ending is intense. Again, it's actually genuinely intense. It's actually not staged. And that's what makes it so good. This is a very good special. Very fucking good special. And yeah, like, I'd argue this is definitely in the top 5 for me personally. One of the best specials. Easily the best Grand Tour special, and that's even after the finale. Up next is Madagascar. Now, Madagascar, when I ranked this last time, I ranked it quite highly, and I still think it's quite a good special. However, looking online, looking at other people's perspective on this one, people really don't like this special. They really don't like this special. Like, whereas I find the Polar Special to be overrated, I find this one to be underrated. And the reason why people don't like this special, from what I can gather, is the stagedness of it. Admittedly, that is the weakest part about this special. It is very stagey. For those who don't know, the Madagascar Special, the whole goal is to find treasure. And supposedly this pirate buried treasure at a beach somewhere, and having to go to that beach and bury treasure there. And so what happens is, well, them doing that. And so I think, when you look at this special from that perspective, yeah, that kind of sucks. Usually all the other specials, they had a goal which was realistic. Even finding the source of the River Nile is a realistic goal, whereas this is not realistic. And it isn't helped by the fact that the way they act throughout this special is, pretty bad. Like, they all how do I put it? They all act very odd. Like it's so obviously staged and so odd. Like, they somehow don't know Madagascar is going to have a bad environmental road to go through. They somehow, Richard Hammond somehow keeps fucking up and, oh, I remember this. Oh, I remember this. Oh, I remember. It's constantly being annoying again. I don't know. This special, because of that, it does suck in that way. But, this is a big but, I think the special works for the most part. Because environment-wise, this is a difficult road to go through. There's a reason why they call it the worst road ever. Because it is literally the worst fucking road ever. But at the same time, Clarkson and crew, they modify their vehicles, except for James May, obviously. He gets a vehicle which wasn't the best choice, to be fair, but still, it was a vehicle made for this sort of environment. I like that. I really love the aspect of them modifying the vehicles, because again, I'm a big sucker when it comes to them, modifying vehicles and making them work and making them, function in some form or fashion. Again, I like that. I don't really care for the staginess. Again, the staginess sucks, but the environment being so difficult, it results in these vehicles having to be pushed to the limit. And you definitely see it with Richard Hammond. Richard Hammond, he gets these tracks to try and traverse, and at first it works, and then it doesn't work, and it starts to get a little bit worse for wear, and eventually it fucks up, and it just gets destroyed. The tracks do a really brutal way of destroying those tracks, and of course it's also one of the few times where, once again, the show isn't censored. For those who don't know, if you actually watch this episode, you actually hear Richard Hammond say fuck, which is weird because they censor all of the language, but they didn't censor that, and they still haven't fixed it to this day. And I'm kind of hoping they don't fix it. I'm hoping they never do that, because I like things being uncensored personally, but that's just me. So yeah, overall, vehicle-wise, it's interesting. Journey-wise, it's interesting. Environment-wise, it's interesting. It's literally just the staginess that sucks. And I feel like people are really underrating this one because of that one aspect, rather than, seeing the full picture. Which is very ironic, because with the Polar Special, people are overrating it for the one aspect rather than, seeing the full picture. With this one, they're underrating it for seeing one aspect rather than the full picture. So for me, I still think this is a good special. I think this is A tier by a long shot. And I'd even go as far as say it's above the Colombia Special. All right, so up next is Lockdown. This is the Scotland Special. Now, Lockdown was, if I recall, was meant to be another special in another country, which is kind of a good thing they didn't go to this particular country, but still, it was originally going to be that. But then coronavirus happened. Everyone got locked down, so to make up for it, they decided to do a special back home in Scotland. Now, the problem is they can't go in a hotel because coronavirus, so they have to use camper vans. And so they use these American vehicles to drive around Scotland and, try and rest when they can. They also go across, they also have an ending where they build a bridge to go across a river, which once again, I like that aspect. I think that's a great idea. And a lot of people give this special a lot of flack. I feel bad for it because, for one thing, it is restricted. It is heavily restricted by the fact that it is done during a time when you can redo a lot. But at the same time, I do think that this special is kind of deserving of some criticism, because this special does indeed have a bit of a problem in regard to the way it's presented. So, the best way to describe the Scotland Special, Lockdown, is confused. This special is confused. And the reason why I say it's confused is because when you look at this special from a whole perspective, it feels like they're trying to do multiple ideas at once. Like, for example, they want to do the camper van idea, but then they kind of throw away the camper van idea very quickly after that, which honestly kind of sucks. I think that would have been a really good idea throughout the whole special. But then they also want to do a drag race with, a Cold War where it's Soviet Union versus America, with those vehicles, and they want to see which is the worst car out of all of them, Then they also want to do, a show off of all these vehicles. They want to modify the vehicles, but then they want to build a bridge, and then they want to, that's the way this special feels. It feels like they want to do a million things at once, and they don't really know what they want to do. At one point they have different vehicles to show them off, and then they go back to the, it's just, this is a very confused special. It doesn't know what it wants to do. It wants to do one thing, then it wants to do another thing, then it wants to do this thing, then it wants to do that thing. It's like, and I think also the fact that there's already been a Scotland road trip, so to speak, in the Grand Tour. It's seen in Series 3. And in Series 3, they did it. They, it was simple, it's fine, it was quite entertaining, especially the fucking roof underneath the car. Oh, God, that was brutal. But then, they also do the same gags, the whole gag of, everything in Scotland is battered and fried, and so, they're going to do that gag throughout the whole episode again. It's just this feels confused. It feels like it didn't know what it wanted to do. It wanted to do a million things at once instead of just focusing on one thing. And I feel like this is better shown with the camper vans. The camper van idea would have been good. Okay, you can't go in a hotel. You can find places to campsite. And maybe you can do pranks in between to liven up a bit. And then at the end, you do this big river crossing. Maybe you might lose a camper van here and there. I don't know. But instead, the camper van idea, it doesn't go anywhere. They lose all the camper vans very quickly after they modify them. And it's just, I just feel like this is a special where they just had no clue what they were doing. And they obviously, again, it was made very short notice, but again, it kind of feels like they didn't replan anything. They just wanted to get a special out there for the sake of getting a special out there. I don't hate this special. I don't think it's one of the worst, as some people claim it to be. I think it's weak. I think it's confused. But it does still provide a lot of greatness. And I think for what it could do with its restrictions, it still managed to do well. And I think it's better than the beach buggies. So it's on C tier, but it is a very confused special. Up next is the Scandi Flick. Scandi Flick, I believe this was the last one I did last time. So last time when I did this tier list, at the time, Scandi Flick was the latest one. It was the only one available. It was the latest one available, I should say. Now, a Scandi Flick is, out of the restrictions of coronavirus, and now over in, I believe, Finland. Actually, Sweden and Finland, I believe. And this one, I really like the use of the vehicles here. I like that they all have different vehicles, but I also like that they're going through a snowy landscape, but also modifying these vehicles and also making sure to create sort of a way to sleep at night. I love that little gag as well. I love the pranks they do in each other with the vehicles and the snowy climate. Freezing some car keys in a bath and also peeing on it. Or freezing an entire car. Or pushing, a shed down a cliff. Down a ski slope, I meant. Those work, in my opinion. Obviously, this special is very infamous for the extremely brutal crash. For those who don't know, James May had a rather nasty crash. They're going through this tunnel. It's a military tunnel. And they actually went through the exits, basically. And all the lights come on after they've driven past it. And at the end of the tunnel, it literally has a dead end. It's sharp turn right or sharp turn left. So they all went really fast. Clarkson went first. He did it. He survived. But then James May does it. And you see this brutal crash. And the way he crashes as well. The slamming against the side of this wall. And his head hitting this. Oh, God, it's fucked. And because when he gets out, he looks all dazed. He's bleeding from the nose. He's just... God. It is one of the more brutal crashes in the show, and like even they're like terrified. And it does feel that brutality. I think and of course Hammond goes next and he's restart. I think that gag works, and I think seeing James May's journey in this in particular is the best part. Like James goes from having this terrible crash, coming back. The vehicle is practically rebuilt because it's just had a chunk taken out. And then you have the final stretch where he crashes through a frozen lake. Again, brutally destroying the car. And yet it still comes back, missing the front end, but it comes back. Like, that alone is fantastic. I think in terms of flaws, however, this special does suffer from the environmental flaw where the environment is kind of boring. It is kind of samey throughout. They don't really diversify it. The frozen lake is a unique aspect, and I do like some of the challenges they do with the Paralympians. If I recall, they did that. That was quite fun. And, the driving through the tunnel, as fucked as that was, it was a fun idea. But, and of course, James May is definitely the MVP of this particular special. Like, he is the best person in this special. He deserves to, get through. And I love the fact that his vehicle, despite the brutality it went through, it survives till the end. Absolutely fantastic. So, it does work in those aspects, but again, like, it just isn't very particularly strong in the other aspect of the journey being kind of like lame, and there are some stages, like the bit on the ski slope, as entertaining as it is, it's very staged. He's not in there. Like, he's not in there. For one thing, I believe he has different clothes. And when he comes out of it, he looks different. Like, it's just loads of little things. So for me, it is an A tier. But it's going to be a low A tier because it is good, but not good enough. All right, so up next is the Eurocrash Special. Now, this one's interesting in the vehicles that they use because they all use very unconventional vehicles. James May's got this, like, tiny car, a clown car. Clarkson has a Croix de Ville mobile, and Richard has this blob, blob of yellow. And I love it. I love that straight away because you got 3 weird vehicles and they're going across Europe. Now, I also like the aspect that they talk about at the beginning where they say, they've been to all these countries before and look what's happened to them. They've all gone to shit. Whether it's war or something terrible is happening because it's now considered too dangerous, it really puts into perspective, like, just how a lot of things change over time, especially with these specials. Because, even at the beginning, when I mentioned, some of the where they've been to before, and even here, they go through Myanmar, they couldn't do that now. They especially how much more severe it's gone. And similarly, they went through, Ukraine, ironically, I think that was in 2013 when they went through Ukraine. And of course, 2014 is when the war properly started. And of course, 2022 is when the war really kicked up into gear with the full-scale invasion. And, they talk about this, and it really does put into perspective just how many of these places they can't go to anymore. And it's kind of depressing in a way of an opening. And the journey itself goes off to a great start because James May has a crash straight away. I think it's James May, or was it Hammond? Because of the weird vehicles they use. So they already have a crash straight away. They continue progressing through, and of course James May's vehicle constantly fucks up. And I love the prank that they keep putting the vehicle everywhere, like in weird locations every time they wake up, and it's just he has to somehow get back into it. I love the fact that the other vehicle, the vehicle that they have to use if the compromised vehicle, the standby one, is another weird vehicle, this purple monstrosity, which ironically enough, James actually thinks is better when he ends up using it. But perhaps the biggest highlight of this special is the Wax Museum. Like, I think you can't really talk about this special without talking about the Wax Museum. The Wax Museum is one of the funniest parts of it. It's funny because my sister, she watched the videos of all these wax museums, of all these museums in America, and some of them, like, they're so uncanny and bizarre. Like, you'll have, like, I don't know how to describe. You have like a person that's meant to be a celebrity, and it just looks fucked. And this wax museum is just like that. It's this cheap fucking wax museum. I do wonder if they got into trouble for stealing the one wax figure. I forgot the guy's name. He's a race car driver, but they steal one of them and they use him throughout the episode. I love the fact that he becomes sort of like a presenter. This wax model that starts melting, by the way. It starts melting. And all the wild, bizarre shit. And they use him as like the stunt driver where he smashes into things. And oh, God. This is entertaining. This special is easily one of the funniest. You know, if I was talking about... which one was it? The Mozambique being funny. This is one of the other funny ones. I love the difference of the vehicles are really the highlight of this special. Like the weirdness and the uniqueness of these vehicles as they're going through a bizarre, they're going through what is normal environments, I should say, different cultures, different everything. But these bizarre vehicles driving through them and having to adapt with these vehicles. It's just amazing. I love the pranks as well. Because James May is having an awful time, so he fucks around with the other two. Gives these chandeliers on the Cruella de Vil mobile, and the Blob one, he changes a bunch of lights and horns and stuff like that. I love the pranks here. This is easily the funniest special. Mozambique is one of the funniest, probably second. This is number one in terms of humor scale, in terms of entertainment value. And I love the ending as well. They have to go on that boat. They have to just race across. It's just a brilliant little, ending as well. I think, I say little boat, the little boat with all the parts which James May has put down to have a head start. And his vehicle is slow as fuck. That's another thing I love. This is a good special. This is a really good special. And, I think the only downside is probably the environment of the road trip itself, because it is kind of, normal. I think that's the problem. I like the road trips where they're going off scale, but still, fan-fucking-tastic. This is S tier, in my opinion. And S tier because it's just so funny. It is such a unique idea, and it just hits the right marks. Again, I'm just saying that word again. Words, I should say. Up next is Sandjob, the second to last special. Now, Sandjob is rather unfortunately placed because it is in between two fantastic specials. You have the Eurocrash Special, fantastic, and you have One for the Road, which, spoiler alert, is fantastic. And then you have Sandjob in the middle. It's funny because going online, I was trying to see what people thought about it, and hardly anyone talks about Sandjob. Sandjob is forgotten, and yet it's one of the more recent specials, and yet no one talks about it. And again, I think part of it is because it's sandwiched between two such fantastic specials that this one, which is honestly not very good, is in the middle, and it's just kind of there. So I've already kind of given it away that I said it's not very good. And the reason why it's not very good is because it's weird. It's confused. It exists. It's the best way of describing it. So, Sandjob, straight from the get-go. Environment-wise, it is mostly just sand. If the Polar Special is all about snow, this is all about fucking sand. So it's not particularly interesting to look at. But environment-wise, surely, the journey itself will be good, and it's okay. It's okay. The vehicles, okay, so they already modified the vehicles. Okay, that's not very fun. It was always fun when they modified the vehicles on the journey because you saw what they looked like before and then afterwards. But okay, and then of course the beginning where they're on that obvious green screen background talking about modern cars, and it's just weird. This is just a very weird special because it's almost like the Scotland special where it's all over the place. It's trying to do a million things at once, but also just doesn't know when to relax. And, it does things unconventionally. Obviously, it doesn't show you the modifications to do with the vehicles before they arrive. They don't show the vehicles, before and after, which would have been more interesting. They're just already modified, and Richards doesn't work at all. They go through an environment which is kind of dull. Then you got, the beginning with that weird, like, fake blue green screen background where they're talking about... Like, that beginning is so bizarre. It's on par with the Doctor Who special, what the fucking... The Star Beast, where it has that really fucking out of nowhere bizarre beginning, which has no place of being there. It just doesn't need to be there. Like, you don't need it. It actually feels like that. It is such a fucking bizarre beginning. Like, I don't know how to describe it. And it's a slow beginning as well because they're waiting for the vehicles. It's a bit like the South America special, but whereas the South America special was quite concise and to the point where, obviously they're driven up on a boat, then they're waiting for the boat, and the boat arrives, and it does it quite quickly to speed up the pace a bit. It doesn't, like, linger and take ages. Whereas here, it takes a long time. And for some reason, it's... Yeah, I don't know. Like, it's very bizarre. So the journey itself is not particularly memorable because there's not a lot that they do, really. Richard Hammond has a really shitty vehicle and the modifications don't work. Like, it constantly breaks. Like, the fucking alarms don't work. The fucking, like, signals and everything else just constantly fucks up. It's weird. It just doesn't work at all. And, Clarkson and May, they're having a gay old time. They're fine. They're, okay-ish. I will say this. When they get to this, like, one town, it is funny seeing, like, all these destroyed vehicles and, like, no one gives a shit. They'll literally have a crash and they'll just drive off afterwards. There's no care about the vehicles. It reminds me a bit about the French special. The Trot to Chaos or whatever it's called, where they're talking about French Nair cars, I didn't include that one on the list because it's not a road trip special, by the way, in case you're curious. But, again, like, I don't know. It just seemed off. This special just seemed way too off. Like, it feels like it was made for the sake of creating another special, because they could. They knew the finale was coming up. They needed to put all their resources and everything into the finale, but they thought, why don't we have this one random special just to add in? It feels like it was just made because they were contractually obliged to obey and make this. It doesn't seem like this special was necessary. Like, it doesn't. It just feels very pointless, and that's how I felt watching it. And rewatching it again, like, because the first time I watched it, I kind of forgot about it. The second time watching it, I was just not enjoying it. I was just bored. Like, this reminds me of the India special, where it's just boring. There's not really a lot going on. The constant staginess of it as well. This is such a fucking staged special. Like, there's a reason why a lot of people really don't like the Grand Tours as much as Top Gear, because the staginess does get a little bit annoying, And this one is another classic case of where they just put the staginess to the forefront and they make it too staged. And it feels too, on the nose. And it's like, there's constantly this worry about this fuel truck. And, trying not to get it destroyed. And it's going to get fucking destroyed. Like, there's no point in just deluding us. It's going to get destroyed. And, of course, the random ski that they had is the thing that destroyed it. Because at one point they tried smoothing out the road, which I will say is another good moment of this special. Yeah, like, this special sucks. Like, there's no going about it. Like, there's a reason why no one talks about it. Because Sandjob just sucks. It just sucks. This is, honestly, I'm going to say it's the worst. I'm going to say it's the worst special. Because at least with the India special, you had some aspect of a goal. You had some, it was consistent. Like, sure, it wasn't interesting. They were going around the same environment all the time. They could have done a whole lot more. But at least it was consistent. At least it was consistent in, this is how it should be. We're going to try and, advertise Britain, and we're going to do all these different things. At least it was consistent with what it was doing. This one is inconsistent, and it's edited weirdly. It's formatted and laid out weirdly. It's confused. It is a confused mess of a special that feels like it was contractually obliged to be made rather than actually being wanting to be made. That's the way I see Sandjob. Up next is the grand finale itself. One for the road. This is the special, which I kind of spoiled by saying that I'd cry at it, and a lot of other people cried at it. I won't lie, I was blubbering like a baby. This one made me sad. It made me really sad. It was difficult trying to rewatch it again. I won't lie, I actually stopped rewatching it after the train car bit because I knew what was coming. This special, they didn't have to go this fucking hard to make it so good. They didn't. If you take away the emotional impact of this special, this is a beautiful special. A beautiful special. The environment is lush and diverse, and it is constantly changing and adapting. The vehicles they're using, the vehicles they always wanted to own, vehicles they always wanted to use, is a great aspect. It reminds me of the Eurocrash Special, where they're getting unique vehicles for their own specific needs. Or for their own specific tastes, I should say. And, it's just gorgeous. The Zimbabwe is gorgeous. And Clarkson even says it's a gorgeous environment. But it also just has all these, reflections on the past as well. The obvious one being the ending, where they go back to Botswana and they redo the bit at the end. But they also have the other aspects which are fantastic, which include the train cars returning. They do train cars again, just like they did in Top Gear. They destroy a Beetle because the Beetle was the substitute car. They said before the Beetle's worst car they ever made, and they destroy it. It's sort of like what they used to do, where they threw it off a cliff and just blew up to smithereens. I love the obvious staginess of it. I love how they have this dog and the overly complex way of just killing it by accident. I love that so much. The gags work in this. The gags are funny. They have a river crossing as well. That's another thing. They have a river crossing. They take off parts of the vehicles at the end as well. It's like all this stuff that reflects on the past. It is like a tribute almost. But it also, works as a special because they're going through this environment which is lush and diverse. And having to camp out as well. That's another thing they used to do all the time. They're having to modify the vehicles and also fix them because they constantly are unreliable and they don't work seemingly. I think they pulled out all the punches here. They pulled out every single one of the punches here to try and make sure that this special hit all that it needed to hit. Everything that it needed to do. This is genuine perfection. So there is a little bit of staginess here and there. The bit which I noticed was definitely staged is when they found the Botswana cars, and they suddenly found them. They're still here after all these years. The reason why I know that's staged is because literally a year before this special came out, or even a few months before, I don't actually remember how long it was, but it was a long time ago, they had a video on DriveTube where they found the vehicles, and Richard Hammond knew about it, so it was that bit is staged. That bit is 100% staged. They knew they were there. They went there to find them again. But it doesn't matter because just even them reuniting, it's just so lush. The emotional impact of this particular special, knowing that this is the end, they pulled out all the punches and they made sure that it was going to do what it does best and do everything right. And it's just, the bit which gets me in tears, the bit that got me into tears at first was it's when James May is talking. This is after the train cars, and James May is talking. James May talks to the camera and talks to the audience. He talks about the viewers. He's saying thanks to the viewers for making it possible. And James May, throughout all these specials, throughout all these years, throughout every episode, throughout every Top Gear, Grand Tour, whatever, he's always been the straight man. He's always been stoic. He's always been, serious and, deadpan all the time. But here, the only time I think I've ever seen him emotional, and he chokes up. He chokes up, and he can't even get the words out. And for me, that is when I started crying, and I couldn't stop. Like the Botswana cards, even though I knew it was staged, I still felt emotional. And the ending, God, the ending. Like, the problem with a lot of these specials is the endings are not the best. Like, the endings tend to be some of the worst aspects. Like Botswana, ironically, the ending of that was kind of shit, because it was just so basic and simple. But One for the Roads ending is a simple ending as well. The ending is they go to Botswana, but they go to the same place that they were before. It shows footage of them back in Botswana when they place the hand on the rock, and, their favourite place in the world. Even the way the camera angle is set up and all. And Clarkson, they all get out, they stand to each other, they smile. Clarkson, he takes off the mic and saves it. That's all he does. And they drive off. Simple ending, but effective. And emotional as fuck. Like, holy shit, is it emotional? Like, even just talking about him, remembering it, it's starting to get me a bit emotional. But, it is genuine perfection, this special. Like, it's shocking how perfect of a special this is. Like, this could have easily been kind of lame. It could have been just, here's a bunch of references to the past. We're about to end. And to be fair, they do drone on a bit. This is the end, this is the end, this is the end. And then Hammond says, maybe it's not the end. To be fair, there is that aspect of, they could be saying this, and then it might actually not be the end. But still, if this is truly the end, this is fantastic. This is just fan-fucking-tastic. Like, objectively speaking, this is one of the best specials there are. Like, this is top 3 worthy. Subjectively speaking, I do prefer a lot of these other specials, personally. But this special is in S tier. This special is in S tier, and it is... I'm actually going to put it in number 3. Now, personally, I would put Lorry's 3, or Burma's 3, and, Seamen 4. And this one would be 5. But if I were to be objective about it, this is definitely top 3 worthy. This is definitely like 1, 2, or 3. It could be any of them. Genuinely the greatest special to end on, and genuinely fantastic. It's got emotion, it's got entertainment, it's got the environment being great, it's got the vehicles being interesting, it's got everything you need, and then some. So, my ranking as a whole, my number 1 is still the Africa Special. Like, you can't go wrong with it. It is a fantastic special. Vietnam is number 2. At the end of the day, these 2 specials are always going to be in the top 2. I put One for the Road 3, but if I were to be personal about it, it would be 5. The Burma Special is technically 3, but it's 4 here. And in 5th, it's Seamen, because I love Seamen so much. Okay, that came out wrong. Oh, shit. Okay, I don't mean it like that. I like the special. I like the special so much. Jesus Christ, I just realised what I said. But, yeah, I like Seamen. It is a great special. It's a great special. Jesus Christ, that is such a bad word. It's just such a bad way of phrasing it. God damn it. Yeah, I like this special. Mongolia is next, and then, the Eurocrash is afterwards. In terms of the bottom few, Argentinian is one of the worst ones, mainly because it's an unfinished special, but also because Richard Hammond is really annoying and the journey itself is kind of lame. Polar Special, overrated tripe. India Special, do I need to say more? It's one of the worst specials in a lot of people's opinions, and it still sucks. And for me personally, the worst special is Sandjob. It is just dreadful in almost all aspects, including editing. And just everything. It is just everything you don't want in them. So the middle batch is obviously the South America Special. I really love that special. Again, if I were to be subjective, it would probably be an S tier. But because it does have that massive flaw after the Death Road, it's just, Similarly, Mozambique is hilarious, but the journey itself is very short and it's just a straight road, basically. But then you get ones like the Middle East Special where, you know, the first half is really good, the second half is really bad. You know, and Lockdown where it's really confused, and Beach Buggies where, again, 50-50. If half of it's good, the other half is just dreadful. So really, you know, this is my personal tier list. If you have your own personal tiering, do say so in the comments. Obviously, I'm going to be pirating the original video because I don't like that video. It was done very quickly when I had a cold. You know, it was done like really cheaply as well. This one is a lot better because I've had the time to do it. And it's, you know, got all the specials rather than just a good chunk of them. And it's my own tier list that I made up because I didn't really like the other tier lists that I saw because they either miss out a few or they add ones like Tour de Chaos, which I personally wouldn't class as part of a road trip special. Personally, it is a special and it's a damn good one at that. I won't lie, but I wouldn't class it as these sort of specials. So yeah, do you think that these are the best specials? Now, obviously, maybe some people might still be pissed off about Polar Special, but at the same time, there might be someone who might think that the Africa Special is the worst special. Maybe someone thinks that One for the Road is only about emotion and therefore should be downgraded all the way to D tier. Maybe, you know, you're someone who thinks Vietnam is bad and you're one of the 0.01% of people that think it's bad. Let's be perfectly honest, Sam. Or maybe your favourite special of all time is the India Special. Who knows? Tell me down below. Do whatever the fuck you want. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed this more improved tier list ranking of the Top Gear Grand Tour ranking list. And I'll see you next time, which will be the Fifth Walls competitors, believe it or not, which I will do sooner rather than later.